So, there's this really powerful wave of protests sweeping across the United States right now. It's shutting down schools, businesses, even city streets. Demonstrators are mobilizing against the actions of federal immigration agencies. And today, we're going to break down what's really driving this nationwide movement.
You know, this quote from a high school student down in Georgia really gets to the heart of it. It captures that moral urgency that seems to be fueling these demonstrations. It kind of highlights a key reason for the movement's energy, especially with so many young people stepping up to lead the charge.
All right, to get a handle on what's happening, we'll look at it in 4 parts. First, we'll see just how widespread these protests are. Then, we'll dive into the student-led strategy behind them, which is pretty unique. After that, we'll look at the direct message they're sending to Washington. And finally, we'll unpack their specific call for non-compliance.
So first up, let's talk about the sheer scale of this thing. This is not just a protest in one city or one region. Nope. This is a coordinated effort that's happening from coast to coast.
I mean, just look at the map. The geographic diversity is pretty striking. You've got Minneapolis, way down to San Antonio, Texas, big hubs like LA and New York, and even a high school in Georgia. People everywhere are taking to the streets, and they all have a unified message.
So what's the spark? What kicked all this off? Well, the core issue is a response to what demonstrators are calling aggressive federal action against immigrants. But the situation really blew up in Minneapolis, where federal agents recently killed 2 protesters. And that just fueled outrage all across the nation.
And this thing is just growing. Organizers have already planned over 300 rallies for this coming Saturday alone. That shows you some serious organization and momentum. It's even gone global, with solidarity demonstrations popping up in other countries.
That growing momentum brings us to a really key factor, something that makes this wave of protests so different. Who is actually leading the charge, and the specific strategy they're using?
Right, this is a crucial point from Rebecca Winter, who's with the grassroots 5051 movement. She's saying, look, past protests might have been led by unions or other established groups, but this one came from a call to action by student groups in Minneapolis and St. Paul. That's a huge shift in the movement's dynamics.
And the student strategy is really smart. It's this 2-pronged approach. Friday was all about disruption. We're talking walkouts from schools, businesses, even parts of Hollywood. The goal was literally to shut things down. Then Saturday shifts gears to visibility. The idea is to get as many people as possible out on the streets to get loud and make their presence absolutely impossible to ignore.
Okay, so with all these people in the streets, what's the specific message they're sending to Washington? Well, it's a message that's really rooted in a deep sense of crisis and a pretty serious demand for accountability.
And that is a pretty stark accusation from organizer Rebecca Winter. The protesters' message basically frames the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE, not as a real law enforcement body, but as an untrained militia. They're saying it's something way more dangerous and totally unaccountable.
Winter really drives home the severity of it all by describing the situation as a federal occupation. I mean, that phrase alone paints a picture of a city under siege by its own government. It completely reframes the protest as a fight for the safety of the community.
And all of this leads to the movement's ultimate goal. And it's not reform. It's the complete abolition of ICE. Protesters are arguing that the agency is just fundamentally broken, that it's been violating the Constitution, which, in their view, makes getting rid of it the only real solution.
So, with that huge goal in mind, what are the specific things they're demanding from elected officials, both at the state and federal levels?
Okay, so the core frustration here is what organizers see as political inaction. They're basically saying that the standard political playbook, issuing a statement or promising some future reform, that's just not going to cut it anymore. They see this as a full-blown crisis, and business as usual is simply not an option.
Their demands for officials are super concrete, really a 3-step plan. First, be outspoken. Publicly and forcefully condemn what these federal agencies are doing. Second, use every single tool you have. All your political power, all your legislative power, use it to resist. And third, and this one might be the most important, actively refuse to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. Just don't do it.
So this all brings us to this really profound and, frankly, unsettling question. And it's not just protesters asking it, but a lot of Americans who are just watching these events unfold. When they see federal agents clashing with citizens in the streets, it leaves them wondering about the fundamental nature of their country and where it's all headed.